Hi, everyone. This is Andrew Carvajal, and welcome to another installment of the Alpin Academy. We're looking at the forms for accompanying family members of temporary residents. So it could be someone who's applying for a study permit or a work permit, and they're bringing their children. Normally, if a child is from a visa exempt country, they're accompanying their parent. We just have them fly to Canada and apply for a visitor record at the border, and it would normally have the same duration as the parent's study permit or work permit if they have a valid passport during that period. If the child is from a country that requires a visa, then they're going to need a visa to travel to Canada. If the child is 4 years or older, we normally apply for a study permit. Now, they do have to be a minor child, so they have to be an accompanying child, normally under 18. In some cases, there could be under 22. But in most cases, to accompany a student or a worker and go to be able to apply for a study permit as an accompanying child, that they need to be under 18. But in any event, if they're from 4 years or older, we tend to apply for a study permit for the accompanying children. And we've prepared a separate video on how to fill out this form. But when the children are less than 4 years old, we like to prepare temporary resident visa applications for them, not study permit applications. And we've learned this through time because when we submitted study permit applications, a lot of the visa offices would say this child is not going to be studying, so submit a TRV application instead. So that's kind of like what we tend to do. And again, it's an accompanying child under 4 who's accompanying a parent who's studying or working, and they require a visa to come to Canada. Now, the example that I'm providing is for an accompanying child. But if you do happen to have a spouse who wants to come with whoever's working or studying and they're not eligible for a work permit, it could be under the new rules for students that some spouses are not eligible for work permit, or it could be under new rules for workers as well that the spouse of a worker might not be eligible for a work permit, but they do want to be with their spouse while they're in Canada. And if they need a visa to come to Canada, then you would be using this form too for the spouse. Okay. So let's take a look at the form. Remember, all the names and all the information here that I make is fictitious, just because I wouldn't want to use any information about a real client. Enter the full name as it appears in the passport. If there's more than one last name, enter it there. More than one name, enter it there. If the child has had a different name in the past, you can enter it there. This happens often when there's nicknames, when someone uses a different English name, for instance, but they might have a different legal name, or when you have uh, women. Obviously, it wouldn't be the case of a child, but let's say we're doing a Tier V application for an accompanying spouse, and the spouse had a maiden name which was different than the name that they have right now. You would answer yes to that second question and enter the name. Then it asks about the date of birth, sex, country of citizenship, what's the status in the country where they're applying from, or the country of residence. If they've lived in the last 5 years in another country and the status that they had. For the purpose of this example, we've said no, but if they had, then you would answer yes and explain the status. There is a question about whether they're applying at the same country of the country of residence. And normally the answer is yes. Sometimes we do have some applications where someone is applying at a different country. We often have to do this when someone is physically located in Canada, but they're not allowed to apply for a study permit or a work permit inside of Canada. Um, and in sometimes it could happen within a tier V setting, but it's less common. And in that case, we have to answer no to this question. But I wouldn't worry too much about it right now. Normally, when you have an accompanying child of a student or a worker inside of Canada, you'll just apply for a visitor record extension. You're not applying for a TRV unless they need to travel. Then marital status, which is normally single, their information about their education, their native language and whether they speak English or French. It's very possible that they don't speak either English or French. Passport information, contact information. Here, we tend to put in the mailing address our office address and in the residential address that of the client. But some practitioners, they just put the residential address as the current mailing address, and then just answer yes to the second question. What is important is that in the contact information we always put ours. So this would be my number or the lawyer at my firm who's doing that. Obviously, this is a fake number that I provided here, and their email address. Here's the important part. I think up to now, most of it is fairly uncontroversial. Now, the purpose of the visit is important here because this is an accompanying child who needs to apply for a visa, and they're accompanying a parent who's either a student or a worker. So normally, what I put is purpose of my visit. I put other because there's really none of the ones that appear there, and I put minor accompanying parent on work permit, or minor accompanying parent on study permit. That's normally what I would enter there. The length of the visit, I normally make it coincide with whatever the parent's job offer is, or the education that they will have in Canada and how long they will be in Canada. And for the funds available for my stay, if they're accompanying someone who's working in Canada, I put the wage of the job offer here. So let's say, for instance, they're accompanying a parent who's making $70,000 a year. That's what I put it there. But if they're accompanying a parent who's a student, then I would put the same number that I put in the parent's study permit application for the funds that they're approving. In this case, this child is coming with the father, who's, let's say in this case, in this example, gonna be a work permit holder, and the mother, who's also gonna be a work permit holder, but she'll have a spousal open work permit. So in this case, I enter their information here, and I put what they are. Their address is not yet determined because they haven't come to Canada. So, but I do know the city where they're likely going to be living, so I put that there. Now let's do a different example. Let's say this is the TRV application for a spouse who's not allowed to apply for a work permit. So they're just applying for a TRV to accompany their spouse. In this case, I would say that they're accompanying the name of the principal applicant, and relationship to me would be husband, wife, common law spouse, whatever it is. Education, post-secondary education wouldn't apply to a minor child, so you answer no there. And they shouldn't have employment either, but this form is made in a way that you can leave employment blank. So normally what I would do here is that if they've had some studies, I would enter them there, but if not, then I'll just put it's in here, the date of birth of this child. So I make it coincide with their date of birth. Infant child, not applicable to all of this. And yeah, and you have to enter a country, so I enter that there. Background information, if they're under 18, you don't have to fill out this section, so you can leave it clear. At our office, we tend to complete it, mainly because, I mean, it's very unlikely that one of the minor child would have military history, or they would have a criminal history or anything like that, but they might have visa refusals, and I like to include that there. But again, it's not mandatory. It must only be completed if they're over 18 or more or older. So you can leave it clear, like I've done here. And then this form should be signed by an adult parent. So normally I put the name of the principal applicant. We don't print and sign these forms because you need to upload them in this format, in the electronic format. And I try to date them at a date that's fairly in close proximity to when we upload it. So here's the name of the principal applicant here, who's the father. And yeah, this is the application for a TRV for someone who's accompanying either a worker or a student in Canada. Hope you find this helpful. And yeah, I'll see you at a next installment of the Elpin Academy. Thank you for watching. If you want to continue learning, be sure to explore the full range of resources available to immigration and legal practitioners through the Elpin Academy and Elpin's CPD courses. Visit elpin.ca/academy to access the entire library of practical on-demand content.